Hey folks, we're coming to you live on 3D Politics once again on a Monday night. I hope we are hitting it. I don't see myself yet. There's always a little bit of excitement. There we go. Looks like we've got.
Coming to you live
There we go. We'll kill that.
Yep.
Well, it's a little bit more exciting than I thought it would be, but now we are now.
All right.
Tom McCay here, your host with 3D Politics Live. David Van, right over there, soontopolitics.org, and of course David Oldham, constitutionalgrounds.com. I am Tommy McCay right here on 3D Politics. Catch me, McCay, at 3dpoliticslive.com, and of course at Tom E. McCay, Facebook and Twitter. We've got a lot to talk about. Once again, term limits. You wouldn't think it'd be in the news, but it is. Redistricting. Notice how we didn't start with viral news. It's pretty exciting. I think personally it's a Manchurian virus, which means it was here the whole time and then they suddenly made it start working. And also Governor Stitt and Mayor G.T. Bynum have been in the news pretty hard recently, and I want to talk a little bit about that. And also constitutionalgrounds.com has some exciting news and stuff that they have been discussing, not only regionally and statewide, but also nationally. So before we jump in there, because I am just chomping at the bit, I got to tell you, it's been pretty exciting around the house. I've got a 6-year-old, I got a 12-year-old 6th grader who is asking me every day, when will school end? Because it's just a matter of time. So that's what we do. It's not like, Joy Hoffmeister doesn't come teach my kids, but she does feed them. What about you guys? What's going on before we jump into it, term limits and that?
God, I went over to my granddaughter's house last week, got to talk to her through the screen window, and her fishing pole came today from Grandpa, and we are going fishing this weekend. I tell you
good,
what.
yeah.
Yep.
Oh, awesome.
Yes,
Awesome.
I tell you what, she's my favorite babysitter. She loves babysitting Grandpa. 4 years old, last Monday, 4 years old.
Oh, congrats. Well, happy birthday. How about that?
Yeah.
Oldham, what about you before we jump into it?
Well, hey, I went out and day one I got a haircut.
Nice.
Finally, I've been wanting that, and so I got a haircut. And then it turned out that the place I went to was in Tulsa, and Tulsa wasn't officially open. Our would-be Burgermeister didn't like that the governor's orders and thought it should be at least a week later. So anyway,
Sure.
but I got my haircut. I'm looking for a restaurant to go to this Friday when they get to open a little bit, and head out and start giving some tips to our non-essentials.
What about bowling alleys? Why aren't they essential yet? When can I go bowling? That's my.
And what about the movie theaters? I mean, I think I was wondering about that today. Are they gonna how far is this gonna go? Are we gonna just have to sit 3 seats apart? Otherwise, everything would be a problem.
Right.
And if I take somebody, can I sit next to them, or do I have to sit?
No. I think I could bowl alone.
Drinks?
I will. So, Van, you've got some interesting news that is not virally oriented. It has to do with term limits that were passed some time ago in Oklahoma, and we're seeing some effect, and you're keeping a track of it. So tell us a little bit about term limits in Oklahoma and what's going on.
Yeah, I tell you what, a few years ago, I met a man named Lloyd Noble II. Lloyd is from... he's from Oklahoma, prominent family here, and he passed a law that's going to affect these 5 gentlemen here. Now, these are 5 lawmakers. From the top, you've got Charles Ortega, and you got Lewis Moore. And in the middle here, we got my friend and my senator, Gary Stanislawski, Mike Sanders, and Speaker Pro Temp of the House, Harold Wright.
Okay.
These are the only 5 out of 149 lawmakers that actually are going to be term limited this year. Now, why am I saying that? I'm saying that because when Lloyd Noble decided that he was going to bankroll, he's from a wealthy family, okay? The Lloyd Noble Center in Norman, named after his father, okay? They've done so much for Oklahoma. Wealthy family going way back to beginning of statehood. And Lloyd was on C-SPAN right after this passed. In 1990, Oklahoma became the first state to enact term limits on their legislature. And what it did do was hasten the end of the Democrat control, because you didn't have guys spending 40, 50 years in the House anymore.
Okay, hold on. Let me catch everybody up, and mainly me, because what you're saying is when you say legislature, is it House and Senate?
Yep, both of them.
And the term limit was for how long of a term?
It says, okay, you're grandfathered in, so they aren't going to count past years against you, but beginning in 1990, the clock starts, and you got 12 years accumulative between House and Senate. You can't run 12 years in the House and then another 12 years in the Senate.
Boy, it's like they thought of everything.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Now, my friend Randy Brogdon, Senator Brogdon, another 17 years later, decided, well, if it's good enough for the legislature, it's good enough for the statewide elected official, including the governor. So Brogdon got the same thing put on state question, put in front of the people, and it passed. Okay, so that's why your governor can only serve 2 4-year terms. So the statewide elected officials get a total of 8, not 12, 8. The only exception on that is the Corporation Commission, and God knows why they skipped that. But our friend Bob Anthony's been on the Corporation Commission for 30-some years now. Okay? But now, when Randy Brogdon ran for governor 3 years later, I was talking to Brogdon at a Christmas party one time. I said, do you know Lloyd Noble? He said, do I? He flew me all over the state when I was running for governor. And I said, well, that makes sense. You were the two guys that put state term limits on lawmakers. Well, here's the point I'm getting at in all this. Whereas it used to impact at the beginning, 2002 was the first year it kicked in. And oh my God, like almost a third of the House was impacted by it. Now there's only 5. So what I'm saying is term limits is not having that deep of an impact anymore. Our turnover in the legislature is getting to be so big. Now, there are people that say that's not all good news, and I'll tell you 2 reasons. I think Oldham will want to jump in on this.
So let me. I'm trying to follow because these numbers. You start saying 12, and
yeah.
What you're saying is we're turning them over faster than the term limit requires. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly.
Okay.
Correct.
Yes, and because you're not attracting that career politician type, because he knows he can only do 12 years, and that's if he stays popular enough to get reelected. And then you got to go find some other gig, and a lot of them are rotating over to county government. We see a lot of that. I think in Tulsa here, just about all of them, it seems, have been former lawmakers that are now in county government. John Wright, Fred Perry, a number of them here in Tulsa. Look over in Oklahoma City, you got Kevin Calby, went from the House, termed out, and then went over to, he's now county commissioner. So now that's true in the 2 big counties, because these 2 big counties pay their county commissioners really good. The rest of the state doesn't pay them crap. It's not much of a job, the rest of the state, as far as lucrative. Okay, but here's what I'm getting at. Number one, we cut their pay. The last session, this current bunch is making about 10% less than they were 2 years earlier. Okay, we have a special agency board or a commission whose job it is to decide what they get paid. They don't get to vote themselves a raise. Okay, we set it up that way. That was done years ago. But here's the problem we have with this, is our institutional knowledge base isn't what it used to be. I mean, you look at the House right now, just about half the House is in their freshman year, or freshman session, right? The people who benefit from this are the agencies run amok. Because if they don't like the committee chair who has oversight over them, they can wait them out. You know, and
there was a British TV show about that.
Yeah, and the agencies end up being the mentors of the committee chairs, because the new committee chair comes in, and most of our House committee chairs haven't been chairman of their committee for more than 4 years, most of them. And so they're having to learn, and who are they going to learn? They're asking the agency, well, tell me how your system works. An agency gets to tell them whatever they want.
Well, let me devil's advocate this a little bit. You know, there's staffers that make a lot of decisions that are unelected all the time.
Yes.
And they're up in there. And then I just I wonder if they are term limited, then what I'm trying to get at is that some people say, I wish government would get stuff done, and I'm saying no, gridlock is a good thing. And so when you're saying we're not advancing career politicians, I'm saying, isn't that a good thing? We're not drawing, you know, good. They don't know what they're doing. Good.
We're also chasing away good people who could stay around a little bit longer and do more and good work. Nathan Dahm is one.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's going to be limited out. I mean, if he makes it through this election cycle.
Oh, he's already won. He's
already won. He didn't even draw an opponent, so he's already in. So he's got another 4 years. He'll term out unless he gets a different gig that will carry him, you know, have him leave early. But he will term out, and he will only have gotten so much done. And there's so much more to do.
Right.
Let me reset before we move on. You're watching 3D Politics. Tommy McCay, your fine host, here with David Vann and David Oldham every Monday night at 7, and sometimes on Thursday when we have a fine interview. We had a couple of nice people we interviewed just last Thursday, Mayor Brian Hobbs and Kenny Bob Tapp also. But moving on with tonight's show, what else before we close out this term limits and move on to redistricting, etc.?
Right. So here's the point I want to talk about. A couple of years ago, I was at the Capitol with Tom Coburn. We were fighting some tax increases, and Coburn was saying, look, we should have real oversight over these agencies by the legislature. Here's the problem. We don't pay our lawmakers to be year-round lawmakers. We don't pay them to have that kind of expertise and oversight, and the rotating cakewalk of chairs, so that nobody gets good at it. And so it would make sense to maybe relook at this term limits to maybe it shouldn't be 12 years. Maybe it should be 16. Maybe we adjust it. Now, there are people that say, well, term limits themselves are violating our rights as citizens to pick who we want. Because it literally says, no, he's been there 12 years. You're not allowed to vote for this person. They're not allowed
to
run.
That was my original contention why I didn't like term limits. The term limits is called an election. That's when you limit.
Right.
Exactly. And I've been saying that for years. So.
Right. And I think if we, now the pragmatic part of me says, you probably make everybody more likely to agree with a compromise of, let's add 4 more years to it. Let's say 16.
Sorry, this is ridiculous. Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Why do you say that, Tom?
Because it's like putting a Band-Aid on a hemorrhage. I mean, if you don't like the idea, it was a bad idea in the first place. Well, let's extend it another...
Tom, here's what...
you sound like me, Tom.
Okay.
I'm getting smarter hanging out with you, Dave.
Exhibit A. State Representative Madigan from Illinois. Probably the most powerful man in any state legislature in America. He was first elected. Yeah. He was first elected 48 years ago. And he has been the Speaker of the House there 38 of the last 40 years. And
Wow.
he rules that place with an iron fist. And I'm telling you, all the trappings of a political machine are very much there. Let's come back to Oklahoma, 1970s, 80s, 90s. A man called Gene Stipe of the Oklahoma Senate. He died in a prison hospital. He was so corrupt when they finally got him out because of term limits, largely. He wanted to control who got in, and he violated all kinds of election laws and went to prison for it. Okay? Now, did he just get corrupt after he left office? Oh, God, no. God, no. That man was corrupt. What I'm saying is there is a problem. They too tend to become more corrupt the more they're in office, not less corrupt.
Well, and that comes down to what I would always want to talk about in these issues, and that is term limits the proper remedy to the problem? The problem is corruption. So what do we do with corrupt politicians? Are they not criminals? And so if they're criminals, why are we just talking about term limits and we're not talking about criminal penalties for them and actually dealing with the issue instead of some other superfluous thing?
You're talking about you're talking about a deterrent to the corruption as opposed to just, well, how do we, lick it and
but
stick it?
I'm motivated first of all by my concerns as a citizen wanting good government. And I do want committee chairmen there who have more expertise, more experience. In fact, here's where I would go on it, and this isn't term limits, but it's another way to climb the mountain, is you make your committee chairs a year-round and salary commensurate with it legislative position. Now, Eccles and McCall are at the Capitol year-round, for instance. But the committee chairs, if we're going to expect them to truly be oversight over those committees, they're going to need the manpower and staff that they can independently provide the watchdog responsibilities that we need them to do.
Unfortunately, you've made quite a compelling argument, David.
Okay.
I hate that.
Well, I would have
because,
to think
that's more money.
All we're talking about is growing government.
Well,
exactly.
No. If you're paying a legislature $30,000 more or $40,000 more to do that, compared to the hundreds of millions of dollars that they have to oversee in these agencies, I'm telling you, that's the best investment.
Right. Well, you're also talking staff, but I mean, it's
you're right.
Growth, but it would be proper if it was necessary. Then we would have to think about whether it's necessary. The real issue and the real problems with our government and our the things that government gets into is they have usurped their rightful authority. We have not given them explicit enumerated powers to do things they do. And so they don't have the right to, say, do Medicare. They don't have the right to license our driving. They don't have the right to do so many of the things, and we could go on and on and on.
Well, let me also just kind of bolster Oldham's point here. Not only do they not have the right, we're admitting our failure in our ability to pick our leaders when we admit we need a watchdog group. That means that the people we elected in the first place were worthless scoundrels, and we're going to elect a second group to cover the first group. I mean, it's like, you guys can't pick a group.
Okay, but the art of politics is finding consensus. Okay?
But we're not talking about politics here. When we are talking about when we're talking about a watchdog, when we're talking about usurpation of powers, when we're talking about a legislature that would violate rights and legislators who would violate rights through their legislation, then we are talking about criminal acts, and that is a matter for law enforcement.
Okay, I get the point. Van, what's your point about building consensus?
Well, yeah, you find your consensus, and in Oldham is probably getting sick of me using this analogy, is moving the ball down the field. And I'm saying that you will get the political consensus to ease off the term limits another 4 years rather than a stark saying, throw them out. I think, if you find out if 4 years makes for better lawmakers, then hey, why not throw out the prohibition altogether?
Well, I've never actually thought about whether this is a constitutional issue on the.
It is. We voted on it as a constitutional amendment.
State constitutional issue.
I mean on an individual rights issue, which are all protected by the Bill of Rights. So just because the
no.
Hold on. Let me ask a question here. I think when Van says we did vote on it, it is constitutional. He means from a state perspective. Typically, when Oldham talks about constitution, he means federal.
How old do you have to
I'm
be?
I'm talking about individual, and the individual rights are protected, whether or not the state cannot, even by the state constitution, override the federal Bill of Rights.
Oldham, listen to me. You must be a natural-born citizen to run for president. You must be 35 years of age to be president. There are all kinds of restrictions on who. There are people who get barred from running for president. Are you saying that's unconstitutional too?
No, I'm not following where your confusion is.
I'm saying restrictions on people's ability to run for office is all over the federal and state constitution.
There's all sorts of gauntlets and hoops you got to jump through.
Well, actually, it's only in the federal constitution and only for the president.
That's when I was drawing the contrast between Oldham, who's talking federal typically, and the state constitution, which is typically where Van's talking.
Well, what we have to do is we have to understand that the U.S. Constitution is supreme. Our rights are supreme even above that, but they're all codified as protected in the U.S. Constitution. So the state constitutions are subject to the Bill of Rights.
Right.
The question I have, and you alluded to it earlier, and that's why I brought it up, and I have not thought about it, whether or not term limits violate an individual voter's right.
I see your
vote
point.
For the person of whom they wish. If so, then it does not matter what the state constitution says, what we would have voted on.
It's a tiny facet, I get.
Okay, but then you're arguing against prohibitions on write-in ballots, right?
Okay. I'm going to give this 3 minutes, and we're going to kill this topic, and then we're going to reset. But go on.
Yeah.
Because we've done a half hour on term limits. Go ahead.
Oh, my goodness. So, yeah, there's some issues there, and I think we ought to be looking at them. And I think right now, with only 5 retiring 12th-year lawmakers, I think we can say we've weeded out the deadwood.
I'll never believe that forever, but I do see your point that we are seeing whatever the data is coming in on when we made that change. I did, Oldham, catch your angle there. What you're saying is if you could analyze this, and nobody really has, is what's kind of what you're saying. If you would analyze this from a constitutional Bill of Rights angle, you might find that the whole idea of term limits actually violates the individual, not just any state or federal government thing. Tommy McCay here with 3D Politics, drawing it all together, connecting all the dots for every Monday night here with David Van and David Oldham, and we're going to move on to the GT Bynum and Stitt. We're both on the air a lot this last couple of days, and I want to bring out a couple of issues about things that, GT is not just a great, acquaintance of mine, but, we competed. He's my favorite fascist, as he pointed out to me that he noticed that I said that about him, that he is literally my favorite fascist. And one of the things I want to remind you is, we spent a lot of money on the gathering place, and now G.T. Bynum suggested we build the gathering place. Now he's saying don't gather.
That's right.
See, this is the problem with socialist governance. And the people who are socialists will say, well, poor GT, he couldn't see it coming. And I said, I saw it coming when you wanted to spend everybody's extra penny on all these collective investments. I saw it coming. I said that's a bad idea. Okay? I didn't know why, but necessarily it was going to be a bad idea in the first place. But here it is now, a bad idea. We spent a lot of money on the PAC, the library, the BOK, the zoo, the gathering place, all these other places that we collectively invested in, and now we can't get to them. Now, GT recently just did a stint in he did a TED Talk, and he's gotten some national publication where they said GT Bynum is a Republican in a red state. I just about spit my coffee and laughed out loud, because when I ran against him, I wanted to run as a Republican, but I was required to be nonpartisan about it. Because in Tulsa, Oklahoma, as mayor, G.T. Bynum does not get to recognize himself as Republican. There's your fake news, kids. There's a national story about G.T. Bynum being a Republican, and no, he's not. He ran as a nonpartisan. So there's no Republican. Oh, it's a red state, all right. But the idea that he's a Republican, yes, sir.
In my 10 years of being in Tulsa, he has been at one Republican event, to my knowledge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I go to a lot of them, and I have not seen him show up. In fact, he's a regular no-show. We just expect him to not show.
Yeah, why would he? Yeah.
It was a big event, and he was there then just because it was a giant event.
Well, he might not be able to afford it. He did take a 10% pay cut during the COVID crisis. So that's probably going to cut into some of his freezer storage. Hey, there's no class envy coming from this guy. I'm just saying, this is part of what he uses to validate his position as he furloughs his workers. And there are people who are like, dude, you're ruining my life. He's like, well, I am taking a 10% discount, or a cut, sorry. Oh my gosh. But the problem I had mainly with GT was him claiming that this social distancing is working. Governor Stitt has his own angle on this too. He continues to maintain social distancing is working. And again, I continue to tell you, I'm not pro-virus, okay? Just get that through your head. I'm not in favor of this virus or any other viruses, But I will say that there is no, as a scientist, I can tell you, there's no way that G.T. Bynum or the governor can say that social distancing has worked.
Oh, it does too.
No, sir. We don't have any control group, and we don't have a placebo group. What's your joke, Van?
Well, I have not gotten sick from any of the New Yorkers that have the COVID virus.
Right, because abstinence equals social distancing, which is funny why it is the liberals are begging for abstinence today. Why is it when it comes to STDs and abortion, abstinence is off the table? You can't just simply socially distance with your legs together. Oh no, the children will partake. So why is it? See, abstinence is equal to social distancing.
You're dazzling me with your abstinence analogy.
Or is it my hair? It could be my hair.
No. Oh, remember, Fauci is the same guy who ran the HIV/AIDS debacle in the late 80s, early 90s.
No, the point I'm going to make is, Tom, if I stay 100 miles away from somebody, I'm not going to make them sick. They're not going to make me sick. So
okay, all right. But that's not the point I'm making. What he's saying is we have flattened the curve of the COVID-19 virus through social distancing. Well, he doesn't know that. It could have been sunlight, air, breeze, or otherwise. It boils down to causation versus correlation. You can make the correlation all day long. Oh, look, and you know what? If you do what I say tonight, it's going to get dark. Well, look, it worked.
Well, and this comes down to we were talking about off air, but that we're now seeing. The doctors in Bakersfield, California, came out and were talking about the numbers. Rand Paul, likewise, come out and talked about the numbers. We're looking at 20 to 50 times the number of people they have yet reported as having been exposed to COVID, actually being exposed to COVID, or coronavirus, because COVID's they haven't gotten COVID.
Right.
And so we're looking at the actual death rate as significantly lower than what has been advertised. We're looking at the numbers of people exposed significantly higher. We're looking at the number of asymptomatic cases and cases of actual healing, just natural healing. Is
what do you got? Yeah, Van, what do you got?
Well, here's my point, and we talked about this in show prep tonight, is what caused New York to be such a disaster? Now, I think we came to consensus that they were probably inundated before they knew they had a problem. And New York is very tight. The sanitation's not that great. People travel everywhere by tubes underground called what you call subways. They have all the systems in place for socially spreading, and they are a disaster.
Yeah. Okay.
It's one of the most toxic, one of the most dangerous places in the world for this pandemic.
But we also have, as I put up on Constitutional Grounds, the report from Pennsylvania, and we've heard Dr. Birx talk about it, and we have seen it in New York, and that is that there is a misrepresentation of the COVID cases, because things that aren't COVID have been reported as COVID, and part of that is because of the federal dollar that has been tied to COVID. So they were making claims in New York for COVID cases that weren't, because it was worth $39,000 per case to them.
That's
for
true.
Making the claim.
That's true.
That's got to be
numbers
investigated.
Being revised down constantly on a daily basis, being revised down on the death rates and the actual incidence rates and things like that from the known cases.
Okay. I want to draw this back to the state when you're done, Van. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So, there's no doubt, even New York City, they tooled up for a much worse scenario with medical hospitals in Central Park and in what was that, the Javits Center, and then the Mercy Ship, all those things that they didn't use. So no doubt New York got hit early. We know they got hit early.
They did.
It maybe not to the extent that the numbers want to lead us to believe, but they did get hit early. There are real people sick, and but it didn't happen in the rest of the United States, with the exception of a few places. New Orleans got hit. What they have? They had Mardi Gras, and the sickness came like within a week after that big outbreak. So there are things where bad social habits can truly cause more spreading more quickly.
Just like STDs.
Yes.
It's the same damn thing. Stop the spread. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
That's how that works.
But like you were saying, Tom, nobody knows how much social distance is necessary to keep from the spread from happening. Nobody knows, even to this moment. Nobody even knows how it's being spread.
You can say, sorry to interrupt. You can say social distancing helps keep from spreading things that are spread through social contact.
I gotta call you out. Oldham, you say nobody knows how it's spread. It's not spread by sex. It is an airborne virus.
Here's what I'm saying is that
you can't know whether it's aerosol or droplet. They just don't.
You cannot make the statement that the social distancing is what's flattening the curve. We don't know that that is the thing. We haven't isolated that effect. We don't have a control group. We haven't calculated for a placebo. This is called science, David.
Okay. Keep in
I
mind.
totally agree.
Thank you.
Listen,
There you go.
We had social distancing for a week before we had any shelter in place, safer at home, or anything else like that. Any of the lockdowns. We just had an advisory called social distancing. Keep spread apart. And I like that. That first week was good. It was what came after that I had a problem with.
Correlation all day. I can make correlation all day long.
Yeah, but the social
distancing,
was the most respectful of the people and the least hindering.
What about the LGBTQ community, David, that wants to show PDA? Are you going to outlaw PDA?
Everybody shows PDA. Everybody does.
Everybody's gay, David.
I'm sorry that you quit kissing your wife. It's sad what you're missing out on.
Oh, you know her, huh?
You better resume before somebody takes your place.
Well, I'll have to check with her first.
I've never met your wife, but I'll go out on a limb and say you done well.
Well, she says she knows you, so.
I don't know that, but I know you well enough that whoever she is, you did well.
Anybody that can put up with me doing fairly well. But I want to get back to a word.
Hey, listen.
Yes, yeah.
I married up to. I'll admit to it.
I'll never admit to it. She did a good job finding me. It's just been a nice little balance we worked out.
All right.
I know who's in charge. I want to talk about a word called we. It's spelled W-E, and it seems like we all know what we are talking about when we say we want it to be. Right? We like that pig. So Governor Stitt and G.T. Bynum both use, Mayor Bynum, I should give him the credit. They both said we want it to be a certain way when we open up the state.
Yep.
Now, for me, being a Cherokee Indian type, I'm saying, why don't you just Oklahoma Land Run 2020 and, let's have some boomers and mostly some Sooners.
Yes. Yeah.
Open up. I say just open every damn thing up, anybody. Now, what are they going to do in 3 or 5 days? Come shut you down because you started, Oldham, what do you got?
Well, I shared on to 3D Politics the lady in Texas who defied the
Dallas, Texas, the salon, yes. Stan with Shelley.
She just, and I have friends who were there at that protest, and she tore up the judge's order. Now stop and think about it. In Texas, judges have issued so many of these orders, like our Tulsa Burgermeister has done. Instead of him, it came through the judges. The problem is, where can you find redress of grievance if you have the judge who would be hearing your case issuing such a dictate? I mean, without ever hearing any evidence or finding a fact or anything.
Now that judge would at least be
actually a crime.
That judge would at least be an elected official, correct? Wouldn't that judge that would do that be an elected position?
Well, they would. It may or may not be. I don't know Texas.
Well, first of all, the judge can never be the initiator of any petition of the court. Never. Somebody has to petition the court and has to name somebody as a defendant. And the only time you don't first get a full trial and due process of law is where they can demonstrate that the harm would be so irreparable that some kind of injunction needs to take place to withhold something from happening until it can be resolved in court.
Well,
I did not hear any of that happening.
Well, this comes down to something. I'm still working on my article, and I've been working on it for a week and a half now. But it's because I'm almost to the point I'm ready to.
I understand. I used to suck at writing.
Well, this is it's because I needed to do some research.
Absolutely.
Two places.
I don't ever need to do research. I never did.
Two places in the Constitution
I just know everything.
there are prohibitions against what are called bills of attainder, and it's very important that we understand what a bill of attainder is. A bill of attainder bypasses all due process of law and is just an edict which also causes somebody to lose their rights. Initially, and in the British system, it was for treason or offenses against the king. The king would go to Parliament, and Parliament would issue this attainder, this tainting, this declaration that so and so was a traitor, and therefore deserving of death, loss of their lands, their title, their rights, etc. And either death or outlawry. There could be all sorts of things. And if we stop and think about it, that's exactly what is going on. If it's not issued by the legislature, it's an order of attainder if it's done by the governor, or it's a writ of attainder if it's done by a judge. So the point is that these attainders are just going out. There is no crime attached. There has been no due process for these people. They are just being dictated to. And then if you step outside of your home, safer at home, or you open your business because you've been ordered to close, you are just guilty for having violated the order. There's never anybody harmed.
So you're just now listening to David Oldham from Constitutional Grounds talk about a gal named Shelley runs a salon in Dallas, Texas, disregarding those orders to keep shut. And you're also with me with David Van from the Soonerpolitics.org. And I want to bring it back to GT and his statements about opening the state. Tulsa Mayor G.T. Bynum has his idea about who we means when he says we, but then Governor Stitt also says what we, that word, we, is an amazing word. But now G.T. Bynum, on his interview with KFAQ, he said we, during the rollback, he calls it. Now, we shut the thing down with the flip of a switch, but with the rollback, we can't just flip the switch. We got to do this in some sort of careful manner. We shut it down, no problem. But to get you back what you want, it's take a while. So he says, we, G.T. Bynum, this is April 22nd on KFAQ, we really want it to be uniform across the state. He says, I talked with the governor's office, and we really want it to be uniform across the state. Now, Governor Stitt today on Channel 6, he says, we think we've hit the date to open the state, which I don't understand why it is that Governor Stitt says we are ready to open it, but the same we, when Mayor G.T. Bynum says we at the Bynum's office have been in touch with the governor at the state, and we, and that's why my question, who is we that you're talking about? You mean we, Mayor Bynum and Governor Stitt, we have decided?
No, he means me upside down. He means me.
The inverted, the Manchurian virus. What he says is, we want it to be uniform across the state. That's not what Stitt said. Stitt today says we're ready to open it. And somehow GT says we will open up 14 days after we have declining positive cases. And GT's confused with Dr. Dart. We're gonna find out what that mysterious date is, because we're not sure when the 14th. It's kind of like with your high school girlfriend. You're not sure how long you've been dating. Yes, man.
In debate terms, back in high school, they called that moving the goalpost. You know, you really don't want to be held to something, so you keep moving the standard so you can't be pinned down. And the fact is, Bynum is not a conservative. He has never been a conservative.
He's been promoted as a red mayor in a red state. When I ran against him, we weren't even allowed to identify as Republican or red. We were forced to be purple, nonpartisan. So it's ridiculous. But my point is, thank God it's Governor Stitt, not Mayor Bynum, and not Governor Bynum, because we are looking at a governor that's ready to open this puppy up. We are ready to open it up, but according to Mayor Bynum, we aren't ready because we are unsure. Don't you love a mayor who's unsure? Aren't you glad you have that? Now, further, during the rollback, Mayor Bynum wants to make sure, in his words, that the same rules apply to everybody. Whoa.
That's a bunch of garbage. You know
Don't
what?
you love that?
Andrew,
Hold on.
no.
Here's the full quote.
Yeah.
During the rollback, we really want it to be uniform across the state. G.T. Bynum says, same rules apply to everybody rather than differing in one city versus another. I mean, who would want differences per city? This guy is a uniform Marxist.
Right. Now, that was the problem. Andrew Cuomo, early on, governor of New York, insisted that the standards of the lockdown had to be nationwide, everybody the same. And I tell you why he wanted to do it. He wanted whatever hindrance that his people have, everybody has, so he's not singled out as being the biggest tyrant.
Right.
And Bynum doesn't want to be singled out for being a tyrant.
See, there's only two.
Keep everything closed. Bynum wants to keep everything closed for some strange reason. So if Bynum's statement was actually true and he wasn't lying, then he would be wanting to open along with Stitt last Friday. But no, that's not what he's done. So we don't want it all to open together.
And to be clear, I'm not suggesting that G.T. Bynum, Mayor Bynum, has lied. What I'm saying is when he says, I'm asking for clarity. This is why I want to get him on the show. It's because I want to know when he says, Bynum said on the air, I've spoken to the governor's office and we really want it to be uniform across the state. Did he mean we, Bynum, and Governor Stitt?
Right.
That's the context. That's correct.
But Bynum means him and all his lackeys. But I'm telling you, he's a blue blood limousine liberal. He's always been an uppity, born with, born to wealth, born to prestige and social standing in this city, and he's a liberal. His mindset, his approach to everything is liberal.
His attitude of running before the pandemic was he wanted to help take over the public schools as the mayor of a city. It's literally overblown. Channel 6 interviewed Governor Stitt with some. I never thought there was a thing called a stupid question, but I think we might be getting this. So this guy on Channel 6. I am also, as an aside, sick and tired of pretending that KFAQ is a television station. Why don't you just knock it off and go ahead and have some radio instead of pretending? I'm sick and tired of the cooking channel saying, look at this, and can you see the roux? No, I can't, because it's a radio station that's too damn cheap to put on some freaking programming. They're making me listen to a television station and pretending it's Pat Campbell for 18 hours a day when really it's him clicking on play the other one, Carly, from Channel 6. I'm pretty sick of it. And maybe if you quit playing the traffic reports, I'll get over it. But the point is, Bynum says he's confused about when the 14 days is, but Governor Stitt is not confused. Channel 6 asked two stupid questions. One of them was to Governor Stitt, Mayor, we have over $1 billion in the rainy day fund. Should we spend it all this year? What kind of dipshit person ask a question like that? Should we blow everything we have all in 1 year? Great idea. The other question was, what do you say to them? Here's a person in the news asking the governor who wants to open the state, but how do you respond to the mayors who feel pressured to reopen? Pressured to reopen? What does that mean? All right, I'm over it.
Okay.
David, somebody save me.
Okay, if I may. I'll say the words that no TV station in Oklahoma wants me to say. They're liberal. If you ever notice, when they're talking to a legitimate conservative, they'll always refer to him as Senator Nathan Dahm, the very conservative senator from Broken Arrow. Do you ever hear them refer to somebody as a liberal senator?
Right.
No, of course they don't.
They're rational and reasonable.
Right. And the point is they don't want us to see their TV station as liberal. But every one of the commercial TV stations in this state is a liberal TV station.
Right.
We used to have
Right.
2 legitimate conservative talk radio stations in Tulsa that were doing very well, KFAQ and KRMG. Okay, then KRMG got bought out by Cox Communications nearly 20 years ago, and they become liberal again. Now, they were liberal back in the 80s under Swanson Broadcasting, and eventually when Rush came in and they eventually got rid of John Erling, they became pretty conservative. They are not anymore.
They only became conservative because their audience got conservative.
Right, but the point is their news and their management have always been closet liberals. They just don't want you to see it. And the same thing when Griffin Communication, and before that Scripps Howard, owned KFAQ. You've got liberal people running the programming, and they're eventually easing out anybody who's legitimate conservative. And this is a problem, and people are being co-opted. Either you're going to allow yourself to be owned by them, or you're gone.
That's correct. This is one of the reasons 3D Politics thrives and exists, is because we are a conservative think tank where we discuss conservative issues in somewhat of a balanced viewpoint, because we recognize our biases.
Yes.
You cannot balance your viewpoint until you recognize your bias.
Well, and call yourself conservative, because I'm a constitutionalist. I'm no longer a conservative.
Fine, I use a colloquial.
And I make a stark distinction between them, because I despise conservatism as well, because it's I'm pro law and order, and conservatism is lawlessness, in the legitimacy of unconstitutionality. So, but you're right. We all have to be aware of what we consume in the media, and they're everywhere. They're just horrible. And if somebody has a fan in the background, I can hear it, and it sounds horrible.
I have a dog in the background.
No, it's a fan.
One of the things I want to say, we just got about 4 minutes before we need to get out of here, unless we're going to extend our version. But I got some numbers from the governor today, actual statistics, and I want to bring into light as we talk about how afraid we are. But I also want to talk real quickly before we finish out on that, unemployment numbers. They keep talking about the unemployment is this and the unemployment is that. Now, my contention is that these unemployment numbers that they're saying unemployment, these are anomaly outliers. These aren't unemployment numbers. The unemployment numbers concept is an idea of calculating how many people are working within a normal market situation when the markets are open. When the government says it's illegal to work, that's not an unemployment number.
Yeah.
Van.
That's a very good point. Normally, I would say, who needs an employment office? My God, if you can't go out and knock doors and find a job, why is it the government's job to hold your hand and set up appointments for you? That's
right.
Normally. But now we got people who are unemployed because the government killed their job.
It's not an unemployment, it's prohibition from working.
And by the same token, we still don't want constitutionally that unemployment office, David.
Right.
Because the people allowed the government to do that, because there is absolutely no authority for the government to have taken any of the actions to close down the economy whatsoever.
Yeah.
None.
The best I can say, it's setting aside whether or not constitutionally they had the power to. The fact is, the government says that, if something is taken from you, the government owes you just compensation for that. That's coming. Was that Fifth Amendment?
Fifth Amendment.
Right. Okay. That's the closest thing I can come to legitimizing some kind of help for something where the government is the reason why you're harmed. Well,
but the point is, though, that the phrase just before the takings clause that says that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Again, no due process of law, no court case for each individual that has been declared non-essential and been ordered to stay home and not work, and so forth. No due process. We have orders and bills of attainder, and so what we have is absolutely no authority. In fact, that leads me in, Tom, to what I was talking about. And again, I've put it up on 3D Politics.
Okay.
Attorney General Barr has come out, and he's encouraging his federal prosecutors to be looking for cases of governors, and I think also the mayors, because certainly they're involved, where they are violating individual rights. Now, the government's idea and the court's idea of what a violation of individual rights is nowhere close to what the Constitution is, but it is a good sign, because there are cases that are being made around the country for these cases. And as I discussed last week, 18 USC 241 and 242 make it a federal crime to conspire or act under color of authority to deprive people of their rights. So we have both a conspiring and an acting under authority, color of authority, going on. So both of those are being violated by these governors and mayors. And so what we need to do is figure out, okay, how can we get the feds to actually bring charges and do something more than just.
I mean, I like that point. There are two parts to the fight, and one of them is some people years ago said, "Oh man, you got to have a contract." And it's like a contract is only as good as you are able to enforce it. And so what you're saying is we literally have the contract. It's the contract has been broken. The answer is, how do we enforce the contract now?
Correct. Mm-hmm. And that's the trick that so many of us are struggling with, because government will not enforce it for us.
Right.
We can go to government. In fact, I've often gone to government prosecutors and so forth, and I'm often turned away saying, "Well, I don't know how to enforce it." and it's like, well, if you come and tell me how to enforce it, I'll enforce it.
Right.
And so it ends up being all on me to go and read the law and do their job for them.
I've got a few of stats that I got from the interview on Channel 6 with Governor Stitt today. These are current stats in Oklahoma about COVID deaths. But before we close out on that, because this is the show. Now, Van, will you be able to hold that redistricting story till next week?
That's a pretty timeless issue. I think that's a good move. Let's move
so next week, what are we going to talk about on that before we close out my show here?
I'll give a teaser on this, is that we're doing the census now. Be sure you fill out your forms, and that it is a constitutional process of government, is to take a census.
Actually, just so I can interrupt just for a second.
We were almost out.
It is constitutional to give your name and some of the basic information, but most of the things on the census form are completely unconstitutional.
If I've already filled out my safe word, is it too late to?
Yeah, the counting of heads is a constitutional process. Yeah. And by that, it will fall on the legislators next winter, next January, February, to draw up new districts, which will impact elections 2 years from now.
Okay.
This is a very important thing, and I've got some novel ideas to improve it, to follow what David Oldham saw up in New Jersey, the way they had a collaborative, a cohesive set of districts between the House and Senate. It's brilliant. It works great. My native state of Minnesota has been doing it for 50 years, and I think it's something we should do in Oklahoma to avoid any federal lawsuit over gerrymandering, because states who have adopted this have still been able to draw their own lines. They just they're a little bit safer against the accusation that they're trying to harm a group or individuals by it.
Okay, this is some pretty in-depth knowledge of state politics, where districting has to do with exact number of participants.
And here's my teaser. is the article's up on 3D Politics. Study up on it. We'll have a quiz next week.
Very good. So next week on 3D Politics, we will cover these district issues.
Yes.
But for now, before I send us out of here, I want to remind everybody why we've been shut down. This is current statistics from the governor. You want to argue with the governor? Call him up. I'm sure you can reach him. But I'll give you the percentages first so you can go ahead and pretend to be scared, and then I'm going to tell you the total number. But 31%, well, let me start here. 80% of all the deaths from COVID in Oklahoma, 65 years and older. 85% of every person we're shutting down the entire world for in Oklahoma, 65 years and older. 31% of all those deaths have occurred in the concentration of nursing homes, because that makes sense from a scientific standpoint. I know I'm not anyway, the scientist that I am, right? I mean,
that goes to David's point.
Pretty easy. There's a lot of 65-year-old and olders in nursing homes, so 80% of all deaths 65 years and older, 31% of all deaths in nursing homes. How many Oklahoma deaths to date? Anybody? You want to guess?
Right at 200, I think.
193.
Yeah.
So for 193 people who are already suffering the potential terminal illness of age, we have shut down every single person that can do everything, and it keeps me from bowling.
Tom?
Yes, sir.
Nursing homes are largely a function of socialism.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And it leads to a lower expected age, lifespan.
That is correct.
And we are seeing it right now. Socialism kills.
That's correct.
Take
Socialism
care of your
kills.
parents as long as you can, folks. You hear me, kids? I'm talking to you.
Well, but what are the? Do we have the numbers? Do you have the numbers for Oklahoma? The actual numbers of people infected, or were we testing for
No,
that?
no. I took notes on what Governor Stitt said on his Channel 6 interview, and there are what I would say only 193 deaths with respect to the family. No death is a small death. No, what I'm saying is we are shutting down like a global issue when there are only 193 people suffering it in Oklahoma.
Out of 3.5 million.
This is absolutely off the edge, and I don't know why we didn't fill the Gathering Place skateboard park with sand, because the children may be out there in May. I know I'm going to be bowling in May. Yes, man.
A month ago, we did not know if we were going to be the next New York.
Well, sure. Let's hope next time we have a chance to vote for a governor, we don't vote Cuomo in. Cuomo rhymes with homo. Did you know that? That's the thing. Hey, my name is Tommy McCay, right here on 3D Politics. Catch me at Tommy McCay, Facebook and Twitter. McCay at 3dpoliticslive.com. David Oldham, constitutionalgrounds.com. And of course, our wizard over there in the state with all the stuff.
The Homo sapien wizard.
Homo, there's nothing wrong with that.
Homo sapien wizard.
David Van Homo sapien with Sooner Politics. Hey, we appreciate, look it up, you children, especially when you're home at mom. Google it. We're going to catch you guys again next week. And remember, there's always an open invitation to G.T. Bynum, the mayor of Tulsa, and of course, Governor Stitt, to come on the show and talk to us about why we talk about them. And we will see you next week on 3D Politics. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, guys.
All righty.
Just end this for you right here.
And I got to leave meeting.